Jerry, good afternoon. This is a little bit different for us, Jerry. We're earlier in the day today, but gosh, thanks for joining me from the office.
Yeah. Why not? I've been doing nothing but talking about PPP all day long, so let's just take it into the evening.
Let's just do it. All right. This is going to be great. Thank you guys for joining us out there on Facebook and YouTube. If you have not joined us when Jerry's been on, Jerry's one of the guys who does the financing and such in the financial world, and he is going to come in and share some information about the PPP loan system that's just coming up. We talked about the very first one. We talked about a lot of the things early on in EIDL and all those things, and now we're coming around for version 2 of the PPP loan. So, Jerry, for people who, first off, were living under a rock and don't know what the PPP is, give us a little overview on that quick.
Yeah. What the PPP is, it is a payroll protection program that was intended to keep people employed and people off of unemployment. So it was part of the first CARES Act. It was passed in the first quarter of this year. And the idea is to provide funding so that you don't have to go on unemployment, you or your workers, specifically to the DJ, wedding, hospitality industry. It was to kind of keep your payroll going so that you could keep people employed, that you could have them do things, you could provide them payroll, whether they were actively working, whether you were in hiatus, whether you were shut down, and didn't have to convert these people to unemployment. So round 2 is kind of kicking up, again, additional support because we've had extended shutdowns. We're going into the winter months. You know, we're seeing in the wedding industry, which most of the people that are on this call with us are from, you know, the music industry and having to deal with the shutdowns and the weddings that are postponed. So that's really what PPP is.
And for those of you watching, if you have any questions, please put those into the chat, and we'll see if we can get to a couple of those. We're going to make this afternoon a little bit shorter, but we'll get to a couple of questions as we go along. So Jerry, the first one came last year in that second quarter there. What differences now between, if somebody applied for the first one, are there going to be any major differences that they'll notice between the first and the second round?
There will be some major differences. So let's kind of walk through the way the legislation was granted. PPP round 2 is really targeted towards anybody who has a NAICS code that starts with 72. So for those of you who are unfamiliar what NAICS code is, that is what the IRS, the government, what financial institutions use to identify your business. It's a code number that tells us what industry you're in. So if that number begins with 72 and you can find that number on your tax returns, anyone who has any, that's who's being targeted in this PPP funding. It is the restaurant industry, hospitality industry, entertainment industry, summer camps, seasonal businesses, those people that were severely impacted by COVID-19. So for all of those of you who are listening, you are in the preferred group number 1. But it does extend out to other industries that have been impacted. So right now, there are 2 parts to PPP phase 2. The first one is open to those individuals who didn't get an initial PPP loan. So you may have heard or may have read on the news that as of today, people can start to apply for a PPP loan. Those are only individuals who did not get the first round of funding. The second part of it is you can only apply through what the SBA has declared as an economic development agency. So it is things like a local economic development group, a micro lender, which usually comes out of things like economic development groups, economic development agencies, minority economic development agencies. That is the first group that is applying, and they have priority right now. So there is no bank out there that is accepting applications because we don't fall into that classification of a community lending financial group. Now, once phase 2 kicks in, which will most likely be next week, it'll then be open up to the financial institutions to accept applications for first-time applicants and for those looking for a second round of funding. So let's talk about the second round of funding first. And those are really the ones that I think most everybody that is probably on this call has either gotten PPP money originally or probably didn't and is now thinking of applying. So let's talk about those people who are reapplying for a second round.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things you have to be aware of. There is going to be a new application. You are going to have to, again, provide your payroll information. So if you're self-employed, you're going to be going off of your net income, off of your Schedule C or your tax returns as a partnership. You are also going to have to demonstrate a 25% reduction in revenues quarter over quarter. How that quarter comparison is going to be is if you pick either second, third, or fourth quarter of 2020 as compared to the same quarter of 2019. So you're going to have to prepare a comparative statement. So you're going to have to show revenues and expenses for, say, if you choose this third quarter of 2020, you're going to have to show those income and expenses and what your profit was and how did it compare to the third quarter of 2019. If there's a 25% reduction in gross revenues, you would qualify.
Mm-hmm.
The third piece of it is you have to demonstrate that you've used all of the PPP money. Now, the most logical thing is you've applied for forgiveness, the forgiveness was granted, and so therefore you've demonstrated it. If
Right.
you have not applied for the forgiveness, I would suggest doing that as soon as possible, because then most likely you're going to have to provide all that forgiveness information with the application, because it specifically states that you have to demonstrate that you used all the money from the first PPP program. For those people that are applying for the first time, you're going to basically follow the guidelines that was in the original PPP, which is providing your payroll information, filling out the application, and demonstrating a need that COVID has impacted your bottom line. And that's also going to be another part of it, is we understand there is going to require an impact statement on the application. What that will be, we don't know, because SBA is still working on the application itself for the second round of funding.
Which by
So-
next week, you guys will have.
By next week, yeah.
Yeah.
My sense is most financial institutions are going to look to try to do this electronically. So you want to be prepared with your information in PDF format, easily transmittable. If it's Excel spreadsheets, make sure they're protected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me share, John, and let me go one step further, if I may, at this point. I want to share with people some of the things that held up previous applications.
Sure, good.
And I think that's important for people to know, especially if you're going for the second rounding. Because most banks are going to try to go electronically, we're going to eliminate the chicken scratches, we used to call it, illegible applications.
Yes.
You know, if you don't have neat handwriting, please find somebody that does. That was number one, the biggest thing that held up a lot of the applications. Number two, make sure your numbers are accurate. I can't tell you the number of applications I reviewed where information was miscalculated, numbers didn't add up. They had one number on one piece of the application and the same exact question, there was a different number there. So make sure that your numbers are accurate and the information you're putting on the application when it comes to dollar amounts, submitting in the information. Okay, those are the biggest holdups. The last part of it is please become efficient. Make sure that your software or whatever you have on your computers is compatible, because again, it's going to be the fastest mode in order for you to get those applications through. Do I anticipate us seeing the massive amount of applications that we saw in the first round? My professional opinion is no, because again, they are really trying to target those industries that have still been severely impacted by the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they've put in the qualification of the 25% reduction and having to prove it. Be prepared. They may ask you for tax return information. They may ask you for some additional information. And until we know exactly what SBA is going to look to qualify, I'm advising people to kind of be prepared with all of that information. Do you immediately have to run out and do your 2020 tax returns? No, but they may ask you for information from your 2019 tax returns. So you want to make sure you have a PDF copy or whatever is available electronically to be able to submit it with the information.
So, so Jerry, let's you mentioning tax. Let's just pause for there for a second. In order for me to prove my income from, let's say, second quarter of 2020, as just an example, any quarter, it doesn't. I'm going to be comparing my 2020 second quarter to a 2019 second quarter. Would I be showing the balance sheet for those months, or what as the bank are they going to be needing for documentation to prove that?
We're gonna need a comparative income statement and a comparative balance sheet.
Okay.
That's what we know so far. So if you're familiar with it, it's simply here's everything, and then on that same piece of paper, here's all my expenses. So you want to kind of deal that out. QuickBooks should be able to, if you use QuickBooks, very easily be able to run a report in QuickBooks. If you are simply an Excel spreadsheet person, you're going to want to create one Excel spreadsheet that shows the comparison year over year. So again, it's just getting that information in an easy, readable format. Why I stress easy, readable format is right now there's a lot going on with the SBA. Is not only do you have round one forgiveness, but you have round two coming in. You have the EIDL loans, which that has not been reopened up, but they're dealing with the forgiveness and the repayments and restructuring of those. So in this round, they want to be as concise and as neat as possible. We have learned from past experiences in the banking industry. We want to make this as smooth and as easy as possible. So across the board there, we're all looking at system upgrades and what we can do to make this as easy as possible. But what can help you is to immediately start to prepare this information for the second round. So
when they did, they calculated the amount that a person was eligible for the first round. They used your 2019 or your Schedule C for small business owners.
Right.
They line 19 or something to that effect, which is basically your net for the year. Are they going to be using the same numbers for this round?
For self-employed, yes, they are going to be using if you're self-employed. If for anybody who's filing a non-self-employed, you're going to go to your tax records. So again, if you're a multi-op, if you have employees that you're paying and you're a large multi-op and you've had people on salary or payroll, they're going to be looking for your payroll records. The downfall is those, and I shouldn't say downfall, but again, the government has to go back and look at what is something that can be verified for self-employed, and that's going to be your 2019. The good point is, think about it. Us as wedding DJs, we haven't had a lot of work. Do you want to rely on your Schedule C for 2020 to qualify for this?
Not so much.
My opinion is I would opt for the 2019. And I think that's probably where we're going to go. And again, we're still waiting for a lot of the final directive on this.
Somebody had asked if this is going to be like the first round where once you have utilized the funds, if it's going to be forgivable.
Yes, there will be the forgivable clause. The nice thing is that in the first round of forgiveness, those of you who actually applied and got forgiven, if you had an EIDL grant, that was subtracted from your forgiveness amount. So for example, if you received a $50,000 PPP loan and you also received a $10,000 EIDL grant, when forgiveness was granted up until the most recent passage, the SBA said, okay, 50,000 PPP, you also got 10,000 grant that's being forgiven. We're subtracting that from your PPP forgiveness. You need to pay us back to 10,000 over 18 months. That decision has been reversed. So all of you who have gotten forgiveness and now are on repayment of the grant portion that was subtracted from your PPP loan, you're going to be getting that back. That's nice. A positive piece of news. Now, don't run and call your bank after we finish this. We have to wait for SBA to send us the money. So besides the PPP and the forgiveness, SBA also has to go back and relook at all the forgiveness loans and make whole those people that had the EIDL grant subtracted from their forgiveness. So that's a real plus. Some of it may be 1,000, some of it may be 2,000,
Right, yeah.
3,000. But for us smaller companies, again, it's another 3,000 you don't have to pay back.
For
So
sure.
that's a plus.
That it certainly
And
is.
yeah, the forgiveness will be the same process. The other thing, John, is your forgiveness period. You're no longer locked into 8 or 24 weeks. You will be able to customize the period in which you pay it back. So for those of you that are self-employed, it's not writing one check and saying, I'm going to use it all in 1 week.
Sure.
Use a little common sense to it. So, but yeah, I think they're going to set some criteria around that. But again, you don't have 8 weeks like you did in the last one. You will have a greater period of time to repay it back.
Is there any idea of how
the
much?
last thing, John,
Oh.
of how much? Just clarify that again, John.
Yeah, we're kind of glitched here. What kind of funding? The last time when we looked at it, it was 2.5 times, I believe, the monthly payroll. Have they come up with any numbers yet?
For those, yep. If you are again NACSIS code that starts with 72, you're actually going to be eligible for 3.5 months this round. So 3.5 months for those that are NACSIS code 72, that could be the amount that you can apply for. So it does help some of the self-employed people to gain a little bit more than what they had in the first round. If you're non-NACSIS code 72, it is limited again to 2.5 times the monthly payroll.
Excellent. Let's see ahead. Somebody was asking about lenders. As far as does the person need to work with the same bank as the first round?
I would recommend it because they have a lot of your information and they also have your forgiveness. So here's one of the pluses. If you still haven't gotten the forgiveness, but you are in the process of applying, then what I would say is stay with that same bank. If you're new to it and you have not done it before, freedom to choose where you go. A lot of the banks in this funding, what I'm hearing from my counterparts is they are going to limit it to current customers only.
Right.
So it makes a lot of sense because again, SBA is looking that you utilize the first round. So what's going to be easier? Your bank's going to have your loan number. They're going to know that you're in forgiveness. They're going to have your forgiveness information, which can easily be attached to the application if need be as supporting documents. So if you've gotten emails that your application has been accepted, it's been sent to the SBA, it's pending, whatever paperwork you've submitted, have that ready to go at the same time.
Excellent. Another question popped up. When you were referring to the EIDL, you were talking about the grant that some of the very early people received that had applied for the EIDL within the first week, roughly.
Right.
But not the loan side of the EIDL that came a little bit later. Now, that is not forgivable as of right now. Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That is not forgivable. So it is the grant portion only. And to clarify so everybody understands, under the original procedures of forgiveness of the PPP loans, the government directive said they had to deduct the grant because they felt it was double dipping. They had to deduct the grant from the PPP forgiveness because they felt the grant was a supplement to the PPP. That decision has been reversed. So both your PPP loan that you got in the first round plus the EIDL, those funds that are not expected to be repaid are going to be forgiven or can be forgiven.
Sure.
But your regular EIDL loan is not forgiven. That we have to pay back.
And that
until Congress makes a decision on it.
Excellent. Jerry, that's my questions that I had for you. So next week we're going to know a little, well, everything should be pretty much hammered out. So people should, this week, what should they be doing to get ready for next week?
They should be putting all their financial paperwork in order. So they should be looking at quarter over quarter, getting your payroll information, getting your tax return information, making sure your PPP loan has been provided. If any of you have a 7A loan or a 504 loan out there, there is going to be some more relief from the SBA on payments on that. That should be coming out very shortly. So all of that will filter in together. So there's a lot coming out over the next couple of weeks. If you do have a 7A loan with the SBA, not an EDI, but a regular 7A loan, or you have a 504 loan or a previous SBA loan that was approved prior to the CARES Act, certainly reach out to your bank and see what's happening on that front. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, I'm looking forward to next week. Maybe if we've got a few minutes, we can get together and kind of give people the update on where things are next week, if you've got some time.
I think so, John. I think it'd be helpful once we know what the application looks like. I would like to be able to help the DJ community and the wedding industry to be able to at least walk through it. What are some of the key points that you need to be aware of?
Yeah.
To help you through the process. So
excellent. One last little comment here. Somebody on Facebook, they filled theirs out today, and must have been through a second or a different the lender, because they mentioned that the priority was to businesses that women own and minority businesses. So they must have been with a community lender, and it's good to know that they're working on that process.
Yeah, and it's actually the three priorities: minority owned, women owned, and also veteran-owned businesses. So those are also getting a priority right now. So even though the SBA says it's open, all of those are available to you. So
excellent. Well, we'll keep kind of keep an eye on what's going on, and then let's make a plan next week to be back and kind of give people an update then, Jerry.
Sounds perfect. Thanks, John.
Yep. Thank you much, Jerry. And thank you guys for being with us. We'll be back tonight with our Tonight Show at our regular time at 9 o'clock Eastern. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.